Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments and subscribe to our latest stories. Before I start, tell me where you are watching me from. I wonder which cities and towns will join me in this memory that will follow me for years. I still remember the evening when everything changed between my son and me, not in the way most people might imagine, but in a way that left me looking at him differently, and at myself too. It was one of those quiet evenings when the world outside feels distant, muffled by the walls of your home. The clock ticked faintly in the hallway, and the faint smell of the stew I had cooked still lingered in the air. I thought it would be an ordinary night, but then he came into the room with a look on his face that told me something wasn't right. He stood in the doorway for a while, his eyes searching for words he couldn't quite form. His hands were tucked awkwardly into his pockets, his shoulders slightly hunched forward. I had seen that look before, when he was a boy, uncertain if he had done something wrong or if he needed my help to put his feelings into words. But now he was grown, and yet that same hesitation had returned. "Mom," he said softly, "I need to tell you something, but it's not what you think." His voice carried a weight that made me put down the dish towel I had been holding. I motioned for him to sit across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared countless meals, celebrated birthdays, and had those small, ordinary conversations that seemed unimportant at the time but stitched our lives together. The silence stretched between us as he searched for words. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the faint creak of the old wooden chair as he shifted uncomfortably. His brow furrowed, his lips parted, and then he closed them again as though his thoughts were tangled. "Take your time," I told him, my voice calm but carrying its own nervousness. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. I'm listening." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine for only a moment before darting away. It struck me then how strange it was to see him, a man who had faced so many challenges in his own life, look as uncertain as he did at that moment. I could almost feel his heart racing across the table. "Mom, I feel like I've been holding something in for too long," he finally said. "And the more I try to keep it inside, the heavier it gets. I thought I could handle it, but I can't anymore." There it was, the first thread pulled loose. My own heart quickened, though I tried to keep my face steady. I leaned forward, folding my hands together as though the gesture might hold me steady. "What is it you've been holding back?" I asked gently. He hesitated again, and for a moment I wondered if he might stand up and walk away. Instead, he exhaled slowly and said, "It's not easy for me to explain, because even I don't fully understand it. But I need you to know. I'm confused. About myself. About where I'm going. About what I've been feeling. And I don't know if I can make sense of it alone anymore." I let his words settle into the space between us. His voice had cracked, just slightly, as though he had been carrying this weight for years. I saw the boy he once was, the man he was now, and the fragile line that connected the two. "You don't have to make sense of it alone," I whispered. "That's why you have me." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked at me with raw honesty, no shields or pretenses. It was as if he had finally allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of me, and the sight of it tugged at my heart. The kitchen felt smaller, quieter. The ticking clock became louder, the shadows on the walls seemed sharper. Everything around us faded into the background as we sat there, mother and son, not separated by years or expectations, but drawn together by the fragile truth he was finally daring to share. He rubbed his hands together nervously. "I was afraid you'd be disappointed," he said. I shook my head. "You've never disappointed me. Life confuses all of us at times. Do you think I had all the answers when I was your age? Even now, I question myself every day. Confusion doesn't mean weakness. It means you're human." Something softened in his expression. His lips trembled as though he wanted to say more but couldn't quite find the words yet. I didn't push. I knew that sometimes the silence, the patience, was what gave space for the truth to unfold. So we sat together. I could see the way his chest rose and fell, the way he was steadying himself. Then he said, "Mom, I think I'm scared of the person I'm becoming. I don't know if it's who I really am, or if it's just what life has made me. And I need to figure it out before I lose myself." His words cut deep, not because they frightened me, but because I recognized them. How many times had I thought the same thing about myself over the years? How many nights had I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choices, wondering if the woman I had become was the same one I dreamed of being? I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. His skin was warm, trembling slightly. "You're not lost," I said firmly. "You're searching. And that's the bravest thing a person can do. Don't let fear make you think otherwise." His eyes glistened, though he blinked quickly, as if to hide it. I let him have that dignity. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, my hand resting on his hand gradually relaxing beneath mine. That night, I realized something I hadn't before. My son wasn't coming to me for answers. He wasn't looking for me to fix what was confusing him. He just wanted me to see him, to really see him, in his uncertainty, in his searching, in his fragile strength, and I did. That was the beginning of a conversation that would unfold in ways I never expected. It was the start of a journey where both of us would uncover truths not just about him, but about me as well. The quiet kitchen, the scent of the stew, the ticking of the clock, those details are etched in my memory, because they framed the moment when my son stopped being someone I simply raised, and became someone who was willing to let me into the hidden corners of his heart. And as I sat there, holding his hand, I knew this was only the first step in a story that would change both of us. Forever. The days after that evening in the kitchen felt different. I noticed things I hadn't before, small shifts in my son's voice, the way his eyes lingered when he was lost in thought, the heaviness in his footsteps as he moved through the house. I carried our conversation with me everywhere, as though the words he spoke had carved themselves into my mind. That I found myself replaying that moment over and over, the look in his eyes, the hesitation in his voice, the way he confessed his fear of losing himself. I wondered how long he had been carrying that confusion inside him, how many nights he had lain awake just as I had, wrestling with thoughts too heavy to share. And I kept asking myself the same question: why had he chosen that night to finally open up to me? One afternoon, a few days later, I found him sitting on the porch. The late sun stretched long golden lines across the wooden boards, and the gentle creak of the rocking chair filled the silence between us. He looked older in that moment, not just because of the shadows on his face, but because of the weight I knew was pressing on him. I stepped outside and sat down on the chair beside him. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just watched the world, the way the trees swayed in the breeze, the way the neighbor's dog barked at nothing in particular, the way the sky turned slowly from blue to amber. Finally, he broke the silence. "I keep thinking about what I said to you the other night." I turned toward him, waiting. I thought maybe I'd feel lighter after saying it out loud. And in some ways, I do. But in others, I feel even more restless. Like now I can't ignore it anymore. He rubbed his hands against his knees, his voice tight with frustration. "It's like I'm standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path I look at, I don't recognize myself in it." His words struck me deeply. I thought back to my own life, the times when choices had felt like cliffs, when I had wondered if the woman I saw in the mirror was truly me, or just a version of myself shaped by what others needed. I remembered the years of silence I carried, the times I had swallowed my fears so no one else would see them. "Maybe," I said softly, "it's not about choosing the right path. Maybe it's about giving yourself permission to take one step, even if you don't know where it leads. The person you are will reveal itself along the way." He turned to look at me then, his expression sharp, searching. "But what if I make the wrong step? What if I ruin everything?" I held his gaze. "Then you'll pick yourself up, and you'll take another. You're not as fragile as you think. None of us are." For a long moment, he said nothing. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered with unspoken thoughts. Then he leaned back in his chair, exhaling heavily, as though my words had released some of the tension he'd been holding. "You always make it sound so simple," he muttered, though there was a faint smile tugging at his lips. I laughed quietly. "That's because I've lived long enough to know that complications are mostly things we build in our own heads. Life rarely gives us a straight line, but it always gives us another chance." The wind rustled through the trees, scattering a few leaves onto the porch. He bent down to pick one up, turning it between his fingers as if studying its veins and edges might somehow reveal an answer to his questions. Then he said something that startled me. "Mom, sometimes I feel like I don't even know who I am to you anymore. Am I still your little boy? Or am I just a man sitting here, trying to figure himself out?" The question pierced me in a way I hadn't expected. I looked at him, really looked at him. His shoulders broader now, his hands rougher, his voice deeper. And yet, behind all of that, I still saw the boy who used to run through the yard barefoot, who used to climb into my lap with scraped knees and big questions about the world. You're both, I said finally. You'll always be my son, my little boy in ways you can't imagine. But you're also this man, sitting here, asking me questions I don't always have answers for. And both of those versions of you matter to me more than anything. His eyes softened, and I saw something shift inside him. A fragile relief. A flicker of understanding. He nodded slowly, as though my words had touched something he didn't even realize he needed to hear. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The shadows stretched longer, and for a while, we sat there quietly again. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, though. It was the kind of silence that holds its own meaning, where the unspoken words are as powerful as the spoken ones. When he finally rose from the chair, he looked calmer. Thanks, Mom, he said simply. I smiled at him. You don't have to thank me. Just don't shut me out again. Whatever you're facing, I want to walk through it with you. Not for you, just with you. He nodded, and I knew that was all he could say for now. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed his words over and over. Am I still your little boy? It stayed with me, not just as a question from him, but as a reminder of the delicate balance between past and present, between who we were and who we're becoming. It was clear to me then that this wasn't going to be a single conversation. It was the beginning of something deeper, a journey we would both have to take, one step at a time, with all the uncertainty and discovery it would bring. And as much as it frightened me to see him struggling, I also felt something else, a quiet hope. Because he had chosen to share it with me. And that meant that whatever came next, neither of us would have to face it alone. A few weeks passed, and with each day, I noticed small shifts in both of us. Our conversations grew longer, less tense, as if the honesty we had begun to share had paved the way for something new. There was an unspoken understanding between us now, a mutual respect for the fragility and strength we each carried. I saw it in the way he paused before speaking, the way he watched me sometimes as though he were searching for reassurance, not from me telling him what to do, but from me simply being there. One rainy afternoon, the kind that turns the world grey and reflective, he came into the living room carrying a small notebook. He sat down on the couch, fingers tapping lightly on the cover as if it contained something fragile, something he wasn't yet ready to share fully. I started writing again, he said, almost as an afterthought. It helps me sort through things when my head feels too crowded. I nodded, encouraging him without pressing. Would you like to share some of it? He hesitated, then opened the notebook to a page carefully folded at the corner. It's not much, but I thought you might understand. As he read, I felt myself drawn into his inner world. His words were thoughtful, layered with emotion, yet restrained, like a river running deep beneath a calm surface. He wrote about his fears, his hopes, the confusion that had been building inside him. But he also wrote about moments of clarity, moments when he felt connected not just to life, but to the people around him, especially me. When he finished, he looked up at me, searching my face. Does it make sense? Or is it just messy thoughts? I reached for his hand, feeling the warmth beneath my fingers. It makes perfect sense. Life itself is messy. The fact that you're putting it into words, that you're willing to share it, that's what matters. He gave a small, almost shy smile. I think I've been afraid of being seen like this. Afraid that if someone saw all of the confusion and doubt, they'd stop respecting me. Even you. Respecting you isn't about whether I understand everything you feel, I said. It's about seeing you. Truly seeing you. And I see you. The rain tapped gently against the windows, a steady rhythm that matched the quiet in the room. We sat together, neither of us needing to speak for a few minutes, letting the moment stretch between us. It was one of those rare pauses where the world seems to narrow down to the people who matter most, and the noise outside disappears. I never realized, he said finally, how much carrying everything alone can weigh you down. I thought I had to be strong on my own. But maybe strength isn't always about being alone. That's right, I said softly. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone who cares. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. He nodded slowly, absorbing the words, letting them sink in. Then he leaned back and exhaled, a deep, steadying breath, as though he had just released some of the weight he had been carrying. Mom, he said after a moment, do you think it's too late to change? To try something different? I studied him, the question hanging in the air like the heavy clouds outside. It's never too late. Every day is a chance to learn, to grow, to discover something new about yourself. You're allowed to make mistakes, to stumble, to pause. What matters is that you keep moving forward. He smiled faintly, a mix of relief and tentative hope. I think I needed to hear that more than I realized. I'm glad you did, I said, squeezing his hand. And I'll keep saying it as many times as you need me to. The hours passed slowly, the rain easing into a soft drizzle. We talked about smaller things too, memories from his childhood, anecdotes about family, even silly things that made us laugh. But underlying all of it was a quiet acknowledgement, a recognition of the deeper currents flowing between us. We were learning not just about each other, but about ourselves. That night, I watched him leave the living room for his room, the notebook tucked under his arm. I realized then that he was carrying more than paper and ink. He was carrying hope, trust, and a willingness to face his inner world. And as his mother, I felt honored to be part of that journey, to walk alongside him even when the path was uncertain. As I sat alone in the quiet house, I reflected on how much had changed since that first confession in the kitchen. The tension that had once filled our interactions had softened into understanding. The confusion that had once seemed so heavy now felt like an invitation to grow, both for him and for me. It struck me that life often has a way of bringing us to unexpected realizations, not through dramatic events, but through quiet, intimate moments like this. Moments when someone chooses to trust you, to share their heart, and to allow themselves to be seen. And it was in those moments that the deepest connections are formed, connections that shape not just who we are, but who we will become. I knew that our journey was far from over. There were more conversations to be had, more uncertainties to navigate, more moments of fear and discovery. But for the first time, I felt confident that we could face them together with patience, respect, and unwavering support, because sometimes, the most profound growth comes not from solving all the problems, but from simply being present for each other in the midst of them. And that was exactly what we were learning to do. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, our conversations began to feel more natural, less tense. There was a rhythm to them now, a cadence that carried both honesty and comfort. My son no longer approached me with hesitation but with a quiet assurance, as if he had discovered that opening up wasn't a sign of weakness, but a bridge to understanding. One afternoon, the light in the living room was soft and golden, falling across the worn carpet and the books stacked haphazardly on the coffee table. He came in carrying a small box, something that looked ordinary but somehow held significance. He sat down beside me, the box resting on his lap. I found this while going through some old things, he said. I thought, maybe it's time we looked at it together. I glanced at him curiously. The box was filled with mementos, photographs, letters, small objects that carried memories we had shared over the years. I picked up a photograph of him as a boy, grinning widely on a family trip, his hair tousled by the wind. The image made me smile and ache at the same time. You've kept all of these, I said softly. I did, he replied. I wasn't ready to let them go. Some of them remind me of who I was, and some remind me of the parts of me I still want to discover. We spent hours going through the items, each one a story, a memory, a piece of the puzzle that was our shared history. He laughed at some of the photos, shook his head at others, and paused thoughtfully over letters written in his own handwriting, words that seemed to speak from a younger self still learning about the world. I think I understand now, he said at one point, his voice steady but reflective. I've been trying to move forward so quickly that I forgot to see how far I've already come. And maybe that's okay. I don't have to have all the answers right away. I reached over and placed a hand on his. You've been moving forward more than you realize. And you don't have to rush. Growth isn't a race, it's a process. And I'm proud of you for facing it honestly, for not hiding from it anymore. The air between us felt lighter, the tension from months of uncertainty easing into quiet companionship. We spoke about our fears, our dreams, the things we had hidden even from ourselves. Each word, each shared memory, deepened our understanding of one another. It was no longer just a mother and son talking, it was two people recognizing the continuity of their lives, honoring both the past and the possibilities of the future. Later, he said something that made me pause. Mom, I think what I've been searching for isn't a single answer. It's the courage to accept myself, fully, even when I'm uncertain. That's a beautiful realization, I said. And it's one that will guide you far more than any definite answer ever could. We sat together in the quiet room, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. I realized that in our journey, the moments that mattered most weren't the resolutions or solutions, they were the shared experiences, the vulnerable conversations, the silent acknowledgements of trust and love. By the time evening fell, the house was wrapped in a soft, calming darkness. He placed the box back on the shelf, a symbol not just of memories, but of progress, of connection, of the journey we had undertaken together. Thank you, Mom, he said quietly, as he stood to leave the room. For listening, for being patient, for being here when I needed you most. I smiled, feeling a swell of emotion I couldn't quite put into words. Always. That's what I'm here for. And I always will be. As I watched him retreat down the hallway, I felt a profound sense of closure and beginning at the same time. Our journey hadn't erased the uncertainties or the challenges that lay ahead, but it had created a foundation of trust, understanding, and unwavering support. Sitting alone in the living room, I reflected on how much we had both grown. Life had a way of surprising us with moments of revelation when we least expected them, moments that reshaped our understanding of ourselves and those we love. I realized that the depth of our bond wasn't measured by the absence of difficulty, but by our willingness to face it together, with honesty and compassion. That night, as the stars appeared outside the window, I felt a quiet sense of peace. Our journey had taught me that the truest connections are built not on perfection, but on shared vulnerability and the courage to confront the unknown hand in hand. And in that understanding, I found both hope and gratitude for him, for myself, and for the unspoken, enduring promise that no matter where life led us, we would face it together. The road ahead would not always be clear, but the strength we had found in one another would guide us through every shadow, every challenge, and every step of discovery that awaited us. It was in these quiet, shared moments that I understood the real meaning of connection, the ability to be seen, fully and without pretense, and to see another in return. And in that reflection, I knew we had arrived at something rare and profound, a bond that would sustain us through all the uncertainties yet to come.